to the Transatlantic Call-In Show, the show where you can call in and talk to trans people and tell us anything, I guess. But preferably, we would like people who don't really believe that trans people exist, or who don't really think trans people should have rights, or something along those lines. If that's you, call in. We won't be super horrible to you. Well, I won't be super horrible to you.
I might be.
We would love to have a discussion and to change your mind, or to change the mind of the viewers with the same view as you. This week, you can talk to me, Katy Montgomerie, the nice one, or...
me, the total bitch, Aron Ra. On a real note, regarding me being a bitch, so last time you and I were on together, like a couple weeks ago, I chewed out this one caller, and I stepped way too far into a zone which I need more education on, which is politics and econ and stuff like that, right? So I actually have been doing a lot of research since then, and it's shifted me. It shifted me on the Dunning-Kruger scale, where now I'm less confident because I know more. So that's good. Definitely gonna be talking about that less for a while. However, I don't apologize for calling that guy a fucking, like, whatever I said, because he was upset about me saying the fuck. Like, ugh, God, right. Get over that. Anyway, hi.
I think the fuck thing's relevant though. That's it's relevant to what's going on at the moment. I know there's a lot of protests in Canada, and there's been lots of counter protests, and there are in other places in the world too. And constantly you just see the trans rights, LGBT rights, feminist side saying these people want to take away people's human rights, and then you see the other side saying, but they're wearing black clothes, but they are holding signs and shouting as if that. And then the news is like, oh well, who is the real fascists? Maybe it's the people who look like they're wearing black uniforms. Who else wore black? And it's just so ridiculous. And it's this kind of tone policing thing where, you know, if someone's calling in and saying trans people shouldn't have rights, and then Arden says fuck, it's like, well, that's significantly less rude.
For sure.
Have human rights or whatever. So, yeah, but maybe you'd agree. Maybe you fucking disagree and you want to fucking call in. And can we say it this early in the show? I don't know. And if you want to fucking call in, there's still a few spaces in the line, and you can call in. The number is below. You could call in on +1 720 619 2288, or you can click the link in the description and call in for free. And we would love to take your call. You have to call in right now because the lines will fill up, and we can only get so many callers in 1 week. Arden, how are you doing? I've done loads of talking already.
I'm good. I was away at a work trip, and it kind of got spoiled, and I'm not really going to go into too much detail why, because it involves a lot more people's privacy than just my own. But yeah, it's all right. Stuff happens, and I'm back and ready to keep rolling with the job here. How about you? What's been up?
I was just telling Arden before the show, but I'm going to reboast about it. I just entered a Pokemon cards tournament and came 7th. Top 8 is I'm quite pleased with that achievement. So that's pretty much the proudest achievement of my entire life up until this moment. So yeah, quite hyped for that. And that's all I've been thinking about and talking about and doing for the last several months. And I probably mentioned it loads on this show, and it's only going to get worse until this becomes the Transatlantic Pokemon cards call-in show.
I'm waiting. If we get a caller talking about Pokemon stuff, that's when we've crossed the line.
Yeah. When people are like, I'm calling in for advice of coming out as a Lost Box player. That means nothing to anyone, but it was a funny joke for the one other person in the audience. Anyway.
No clue. Over my head.
If you would like to participate in this show, you can call in. But you could also send a super chat of $5 or more, and then me and Arden will read them out at the end. And I didn't actually check. Has Erin written a poem about me? Last week, if Erin got the least votes, she had to write a poem about me, and she got the least amount of votes. So if you hashtag in Team Katy again, I think Arden's already written a poem about me, so maybe she has to do a interpretive dance about me on TikTok.
Yeah, wait, didn't you owe a TikTok dance or something? Your sincere attempt at a TikTok dance? Yeah, I think I won one like a couple months ago, but it's all right. We'll sort it later. Yeah, sure, just making it up. Yeah.
Up to you. Explain the polls.
Yeah. So if you don't know, every week we like to start off the show with polls, which just kind of usually touch on relevant topics. Sometimes they're just a way for us to generate conversation or like give somebody something to call in about. But we will go into let's see, last week's was, should uniforms in schools, workplaces, and institutions be different by sex and gender? Now, I wasn't here that last week, and I didn't spend much time on Twitter, but I did encounter something about like girls should wear skirts because it's like a biological female clothing or something. Is that what this is related to?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So the like I was kind of explaining last time, but the British gender critical movement is kind of unique compared to lots of the other transphobic movements around the world, and particularly compared to the American one, in that they are still, even today, pretending to be liberal, left-wing, progressive, feminist like position. Whereas obviously in the USA, there's much less of that, and it's mainly the same old bigots shouting the same old things, like it is in Australia and Canada, etc. So they've kept to this kind of concerns thing. Oh, we've just got concerns, and this kind of rubbish. And they've still been trying to pretend that actually it's trans people who enforce gender stereotypes, and it's nothing to do with us. We oppose them. That's where the term gender critical comes from. But last week they finally gave up on that. I was quite relieved, actually, because most of the time I spend is saying, no, these people are lying about their positions. You can see from what they do and write and stuff. But finally, they just came out with, we think there should be sex-based rules and sex-based uniforms at schools, which is just gender.
Right.
So, yeah, that's what this is related to. And, but I guess, I don't know, that there is a danger of saying they shouldn't be, like, whenever you bring up sort of gendered uniforms and stuff, they're like, oh, okay then, we'll just get rid of skirts, and then everyone has to wear the same trousers. And then what they end up doing is, rather than allowing anyone to do anything, they just force everyone to wear boys' clothes, which then isn't what most of the girls want to do and what most people want to do. And it's much better if they just have several options. If you're going to have a uniform, I'm not convinced school uniforms are a net positive. I'm not convinced they're net negative either. I'm an atheist on that position. But if you're going to have them, there should at least be some room for expression to some degree.
So when I went to a private school for kindergarten through like 7th grade, and I remember they would talk a lot about how like, oh, this is to make everyone seem equal and on the same footing or whatever. And I definitely, that just was not accomplished by uniforms whatsoever. People still bullied, and people still like, put themselves in categories above one another. And like, I definitely don't think it accomplished what they intended for it to accomplish. I don't necessarily know that it's a bad thing either, but yeah, I would agree that it seems like having some degree of flexibility would be more helpful. Yeah.
I do wonder if that's just a made-up argument to hide their real argument, which is they want to enforce conformity and teach kids to be part of the machine.
Right.
Probably the real reason. So,
yeah.
Without sounding like a wacky conspiracy theorist talking about the machine, man. They're just trying to control everyone's brains, man.
Well, it's a little bit true, but I there could be some value, I think, to having everyone be like a part of like something like that, but I don't know if it works with children. I think that maybe is something that could work better on like an adult.
And the equality thing is also total bullshit if they then make the uniforms cost hundreds of dollars.
Yeah.
And then, or if people can't afford them, and then not only are they bullied by the other kids, they're also then singled out by the teachers and given detentions because their skirt is the wrong color gray, which was something that happened recently as well. So,
oh wow. So
anyway,
this week's poll is not quite a current events related, but This was put up a couple days ago for the line. This is just kind of like interested in the demographics of our followers. Although I did read through the comments and I thought the responses were kind of interesting and maybe worth talking about. So this one is just a demographic question, which applies to you: subscribed and transgender, subscribed and cisgender or not trans, just in case that wasn't clear, not subscribed and transgender, or not subscribed and cisgender. Obviously, overwhelmingly, the audience is subscribed and cisgender who would see this poll. The next group was subscribed and trans, then not subscribed and cis, not subscribed and trans. But there were a good handful of comments that were saying something along the lines of like, wow, putting us in boxes again, huh? Like, and I just think it's really fascinating that a cis person could read this question and feel upset about being categorized. It's almost like maybe, just maybe, your gender is not exactly as solidly, in the normal category as you think it is. Because I can't imagine being called cis would upset you if you just are. It's like being like, don't call me straight. You're putting me in a box. Like, does being called straight actually upset you? That would seem like that shouldn't be at all the case if you are straight, but I don't know.
But this argument, like, oh, you shouldn't put people in boxes, like, that's literally the entire point. What we are saying is society puts us in a box away from everyone else and says, oh, they're different. And we're saying, well, we need to combat this prejudice and understand it and argue about it so that people learn on this channel. That's the whole point in this show. And we need to recognize the injustices and stuff. And we need to be able to say things like, 1/4 of trans people in the UK experience homelessness at some point in their lives, compared to only 0.8% of cis people. And the reason we say that is not because, whose team's winning? Like, which box am I putting you in? It's to say, look, there
most
are
homeless
unique
people. We won.
There are unique challenges faced by trans people, and the only way we can possibly make everyone equal, so we have no boxes, is to recognize the inequalities we have today, so we can get rid of them. Because if we're just going to end homelessness, and then you build a load of shelters, that is great. And the majority of homeless people are still cis people, because even though we're significantly more likely to be homeless on an individual level, cis people outnumber us 300 plus to 1. But then if you were trying to end homelessness and you built a load of shelters and you started segregating them by birth sex, suddenly trans people won't have anywhere to go. And then you won't be addressing the problem, and you'll actually be making it worse for trans people who are already overrepresented. So that's why we need to know this stuff in certain circumstances. And yeah, it's not, if you're offended by it, mate, just don't answer the question. Unsubscribe, block us on all these platforms, go and cry.
There were a fair amount of people who also expressed something to the effect of like, I don't think that I'm cis, but I also have not like explored this deep enough to be comfortable saying that I'm for sure trans, or like they're existing kind of in like an unsure gray space at this point in time. And so they're kind of complaining about the limiting of the options. This wasn't meant to say these are the only categories that you could be in, or that there's no room for like being misunderstanding. This is literally just a demographic question to get to know our audience better. But I appreciate the need to be more specific with words and things like that.
What we need is, rather than a 4-tick question, we need like that political alignment chart. Someone needs to make that for trans and cis and subscribed and not subscribed, because, well, subscribed and not subscribed, I guess, is a binary. Though if you subscribed and unsubscribed really quickly, then you could say maybe you were 50% subscribed. Constantly going on and off. So maybe that needs to be. But none of it's really a binary. I mean, being cis and trans isn't really a binary. So nothing's a binary. Binaries are bullshit. They don't exist in maths. Get fucked.
All right. So those are our questions. Go vote in the poll. We'd love to see what you have to say so we can talk about those demographics more next week. I think that'd be interesting to see more after a week's gone by what the results of that poll are like. But we have a few lines filled. We have a few spaces open as well. So if you are in the audience right now and you want to get your call in, we do actually have some open spaces still. So The number is 720-619-2288. Get those calls in, and we have a web link in the description below for free international calls. What are you feeling? I think
5-2.
5-2. Let's do it. That's what I thought too.
Okay.
All right, let's bring in Min. Pronouns are he, him, any from California. Min, you are live on Transatlantic. What's going on?
Oh, hello, Arden.
Hey.
Hello, Katy.
Hi. So you want to talk about autogynephilia, right?
Yes. Yeah, it's only
Everyone's
fair
favorite.
if I talk to you. Yeah, it's only fair if I talk to you the same as I talked to Arden last time.
Right.
Okay, can't wait.
Yeah. Something I want to make it clear that I don't think AGB is any less valid than my same-sex attraction. Sorry, Katie, I know you don't like that term, but I say that for a reason because I feel I need to be precise with my language. So something I would love to ask you is now. So if somebody if a trans woman come to me and say I feel like I'm really a woman and I want to transition, and if you call me by this pronoun and you respect me as a woman, it makes my life easier, and I'm cool with that. I'm okay with that. Now, but something really odd to me that so this lived experience of this trans woman is something I should honor. But at the same time, that if someone else come to me and say, well, I feel like whenever I see myself as a woman, I will have more euphoria about it's have my love life and social life and sex life better, and all of a sudden that she will be accused of like she's a pervert or she's not real or something like that. So I wonder why is that like kind of double standard in the trans community about the LGBT. Can you explain that to me?
So I don't know if I fully understand your question, but just to try and lay a foundation, and so the audience also know what some of these terms are. So just a quick bring us up to speed. Several decades ago, some guy called Ray Blanchard proposed that all trans women fall into one of two categories, either AGP or autogynephile, or HSTS, which is homosexual transsexual. And here, homosexual actually means the opposite of what you'd think. What he means is trans women who are attracted to men, and then AGP is everyone else. And it's not just, although it is defined by your sexuality, it is also has a load of other things. So it makes loads of other claims. Like the term autogynephilia means to be in love with the idea of yourself as a woman or something. So it's usually the claim that it's a sexual fetish, though sometimes there's some extra level of apologetics above that, which says it isn't always. But the general gist is you've either got some weird fetish for being a woman, or you are so gay that for some reason, something, you want to be a woman. And neither of them actually makes sense, and it's not it's a discredited worldview, and it's like nonsense if you do actually talk to any trans people, and the science around it is a complete joke. However, this term AGP is kind of hang around despite all of that, and that's because it's a good way of insulting trans people and suggesting that there's something wrong with them and that they shouldn't be allowed in public spaces. You say, oh yeah, sure, you are imagining some trans person who just kind of gets on with their life, but actually they are secretly AGPs, which means that as soon as they go into a woman's bathroom, they're wanking off or something, and that's why we need to take away all their human rights. And that's generally what this term is used for. It's like a slur for trans people, and in its sort of general day-to-day usage, they will call every single trans person it, although they will maintain that there are some trans people who aren't it. They will just call everyone it. So just to check what question you're asking, Min, are you saying that you believe the science from this Blanchard guy and all trans women are split into one of two categories, and you wonder why trans people don't like the categories, or are you asking why trans or why some trans people identify with those categories and they think there's like a hierarchy between the two? Like, what could you clarify?
Yeah. So what I'm want to understand is the on Reddit that I read on one subreddit specifically for trans people. So people who don't have enough, karma, they cannot get in and write. So there was this trans woman who write in detail about her experience, and she said, "Well, I have AGP, and I was diagnosed with that, and I transitioned based on that motivation, and it helped my life greatly. It improved my social life and my love life, and everything else."
Yeah.
And she received attack from all the trans women who said, "No, you feeling is not valid, or it's,
Right.
you
I
can't
see.
handle
I see what you're
a
asking.
pervert or something like that." Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's why I think, how come they use the same criticism that critical feminists will use on them?
Yeah. So the majority of trans people have never heard of these terms. But anyone who spent any time arguing on the internet has, and the majority of the trans people who have heard of these terms are like, this is nonsense, doesn't apply to me or anyone I know. However, there is absolutely a little sort of group of trans people who either believe in this stuff and aren't sure about it or whatever, but there are some who treat this like a religion. And you get this little group, and I've met a few of these groups, and you often get like 5 or 6 HSTS and then 1 or 2 AGP, and they hang around in this little group where they're kind of getting self-validation from this hierarchy. And because in the sort of original HSTS AGP ideology, it's pretty clear that there's a hierarchy, and that's how it's treated, that HSTS people are better than AGP people, because AGPs are just some, they're so sex obsessed with women that they want to be some weird freak. That's like the implication.
The true trans argument, right?
Yeah. So there's this kind of like two layer hierarchy. Some people some people have, levels of internalized transphobia where they do think that there's something wrong with them, or they do think being trans is disgusting. Some people just are perverts and just happen to be trans at the same time. And some people are in abusive relationships, either with their doctors even, or with their friends, or with their partners, or with their, like political surroundings, where they feel like they have to accept this in order to exist. However, in general, if I step back and give my view on it, what I would say is, if you feel like a term applies to you and you're not harming other people and it's not causing you loads of harm, then I wouldn't really care, unless you then started trying to say, this actually is how the world works. The science behind this is good, and this is why other trans people are these things. Because in my experience, most of the time when I encounter someone who calls themselves AGP, I'm like, okay, why would you feel like you associate with this term? I mean, do you have all this weird sex stuff going on? Maybe they do. That's fine. Maybe they have this other thing where they're like, oh, actually, I believe it's just where you're in love with yourself as a woman or something. Whatever they believe, most of them then say, and that's why all other trans people are the same as me, and all trans people can be split into one of 2 categories, and this person's a bad one, and this person's a good one, and then suddenly they're imposing their stuff on everyone else. So that's when I would say this person is a bell end and I can't be asked. Usually they're not very influential politically, and they don't have a view that's backed up by any science, so I don't really care. There are a couple of prominent autogynephiles who are gender critical, who use their own like sort of self shame to get like validation from the people who hate them in order to sell everyone else out. But generally it's kind of meaningless to me. However, I do think there is an extra layer where if you're a trans person who's new to all of this politics and stuff, and you first encounter these terms and you're like, it's some fascist knobhead who's calling every single trans person an autogynephile and a paedophile and a sex criminal and stuff, you don't like this term, and then you encounter a few trans people who are like, yeah, trans people are bad, actually. I'm actually one of the good ones. I'm real transsexual. I'm using all these old terms, outdated terms that, other people don't use anymore because I think I'm better than everyone else. And then you see someone saying, I'm an AGP. Then you'd be like, oh, well, maybe this person's just one of these sellout knobheads and I don't like it. Or you might even just be like, I think this is a load of bullshit and this person is lying about who they are or something. And I think that there might be some overreaction to the term. But in general, it's because they're telling other people what to do. I don't know if you agree, Arden. I just done a long answer.
Yeah, no, that's pretty much what my experience with the term has been. The people who self-identify are usually not just trying to, use it exclusively for themselves. They do try to employ it as like an actual worldview. I don't particularly have a problem with people using it for themselves, but yeah, I'm not really adding anything novel here. Like, I also think it's fair for people to be critical and wary of somebody who does use those terms. Or to try to, maybe even from a place of empathy, reach that person and understand why they're doing it, because I have a hard time believing that it wouldn't come from a place of shame to some degree, of, this notion that like my erotic desires or my self-identity has to be rooted in this like invalid object of desire. And so I need this special term, this paraphilia to understand it or express it. And I don't think it's necessarily invalidating how they view themselves, but it is potentially critiquing the language that they're using and the mechanism that they use to arrive at that identity.
Yeah, I mean, it could be harmful to the person if they sort of inherently see themselves as broken or wrong or something. But also, the idea of either of these two types that Blanchard claims that exists. Blanchard's just some random science dude who's a failed science dude, and he's just been discredited, really. But the reason why these are both so ridiculous is if you actually transitioned for sex, whether you were attracted to men or women or anyone else in any combination, you'd ruin your life. Like, if you don't have some kind of dysphoria and you're not actually, I mean, why? I just can't imagine. Like, I'm having sex. Maybe some people have sex for more than 1% of their lives. I don't know, but like, it's fairly, as far as my day goes, I don't have sex every day or anything, or even every week. So it'd be such a small part of my life, and the rest of my life, like, transition has a huge effect on your body and how you are viewed by the world and how you view the world and your outlook on life and your future and your ability to have a family. Like, it changes everything in your life. Your position in society and your life changes totally. And if you were transitioning just because, like, you really were attracted to men, but you thought that there wasn't enough gay men in your area, so you wanted to attract straight men or something, like, or you couldn't find any gay men who fitted the like demeanor of, it just doesn't make any sense to me at all. I mean, I'd obviously, when I was considering coming out, I was like, oh, sex will change for me, and I was just kind of like, well, if I didn't know what it was going to turn out like, and I didn't know how things are going to go, and I was just like, well, if I never have sex again, like, that's not good. But at the same time, I mean, the whole point is I'm transitioning to make my life better, and I feel like it'd be part of the trade-off. So it just seems like nonsense. Like, it feels like on its face is nonsense to anyone who's really thought about transition for me. And so if someone was saying, oh, I'm an autogynephile, maybe they're saying one or two things. Either I'm like politically aligned with the people who claim this thing is real, and so I'm now suspicious of you as a person because why the hell are you aligned with these people who want to take our rights away? Or you're saying, well, actually, I do have some sex thing that is driving me, and maybe I'm considering transitioning. And in which case, I'd be like, what are you doing, mate? If you, like, I don't know, are you really considering like changing your body because of your sexuality? It just seems fucking mental to me. Anyway, I'm just kind of going off now. Min, what did you think of that?
Oh, well, I guess for me, because the first time I was familiar with the concept was like over a decade ago, and because back then that theory was in competition with Born in the Wrong Body, and so it did not really register in my mind. But lately, when I see more on the gender critical side bringing it up, I started learning more about it, and even though I disagree with the trans activist side, but not because of the AGP thing, but because of other things. And when I read the study on that, I come to the conclusion that these people, they don't just want to transition because of the sexual feeling, but because it's so they describe to me as their romantic life and their social life are better when people see them as women.
So
that's how they tell me that.
So
So I don't think anything wrong with that.
It's nothing.
That's why.
That's not AGP as it's described in the literature from what I remember, and I definitely did read through that, although some time ago. But I want to hone in on you'd said you disagree with the trans activists on something, and I think that's going to make for a much more interesting conversation here. And I didn't really understand what it was you disagreed with quote unquote trans activists on in this conversation. So could you elucidate
Which
that
human
a little
right
further?
should I not have?
So the disagreement, the first disagreement I have with them is the lack of boundary with the people who are same-sex attracted. Sorry, Katie, I cannot help using that expression.
No, okay. You've said twice about this phrase. I need to cut in. I do not have a problem with the phrase same-sex attracted or any of the other phrases that gender criticals have decided to appropriate and use as a dog whistle. For example, I don't have a problem with the suffragette colours, though they are used today a lot by the gender critical movement. If a normal person on the street said same-sex attracted, I wouldn't flinch. I wouldn't think anything of it. I'd be like, oh, they just mean gay, and they're just probably from 2 decades older than me. Like, it's just an older term. The reason it can be an issue, that it can be used as a dog whistle, which means it contains different information to the person saying it and to the people in the same cult as them who are understanding the other meaning, is that when they say it, they mean sexuality is purely based on birth sex, and that is the claim that gay men are attracted to me and straight men are not, and that is observably false. So that is why because gender critical ideology is observably false. It's just, trivially untrue if you critically analyze it for much time at all. But that doesn't mean that when they say a phrase, they now own that phrase, and every time anyone says it, it's bad. So if you're just being like, my name's Min and I'm same-sex attracted, that means I'm a man and I'm attracted to men. Cool. Good for you. No problem. I'm not upset. Say what you want. But if you're also then claiming that, if I have a boyfriend, he must be gay, I would say, well, it's plainly untrue and also arguably homophobic. So that's my issue. So it sounds like maybe your disagreement with me here is what?
Well, actually, I'm not really in disagreement with you on that, because last time when I asked Aron about gay andromorphophilia, I had the same thinking about it. I don't believe those men are gay. They are like special category under heterosexuality. I don't think they are gay at all. But that's what I read from.
Sexuality doesn't fit into one or two boxes. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
but
the thing is, man,
so back to Aron's question. Sorry. Yeah.
Hang on. Let me just to finish off what I would say the trans rights activist position was, and obviously I can only talk on behalf of myself. However, I'm fairly well connected with the trans activists crew on said internet and stuff. And if I tweeted out my position, which I'm about to say in a second, absolutely none of them would come at me. No, they would all agree with it, and it would be the position that most of them hold to some degree, which is your sexuality is your sexuality. Like, if you're attracted to people and you're not attracted to people, that's who you are. And what can I do about that? What would I want to do about that? If you're not attracted to me and I'm attracted to you and I want you to be attracted to me, well, I just got to fucking deal with it, haven't I? Because most people aren't attracted to me. Most people aren't attracted to most people. So, and the point here is that some people are stigmatized against for their sexuality, which I think is mainly nature, as opposed to nurture. So it's not something you get a choice in or get a say in. And for a lot of people, you know, they've experienced pressure to try and change it because of these bigotries and prejudices that trans people face also. And, you know, I've also faced to some degree growing up in my life too. And that's what I'm fighting against. That's like the trans rights position is anyone should be able to be attracted to anyone without facing stigma or prejudice for it. So, I mean, the straw man trans rights position is if you're a gay man, you have to have sex with every trans man you see, which just isn't a position that anyone holds.
Yeah, I don't think you are neither you nor Aron hold that position. Yeah, because
but I don't think trans rights activists in general disagree with either of us.
Yeah, so that's why I want to get to, Min, you specifically said something about trans activists' lack of boundaries with same-sex attracted people. So that's where kind of that sounds like that's leading to. Like, what lack of boundary could it be to say that I am a woman and the people who are attracted to me, generally speaking, are usually attracted to women at least some of the time? Like, I don't think that's violating anyone's boundary or forcing anyone to be attracted to me or to do anything with me.
Well, Aron, that's the way you word it is not what I had in my mind. When I say trans rights activists, lack of boundary for gays and lesbian is the idea that it's if you think that because you don't like this specific trans man, trans woman because they have the thing there, then maybe because you born in the cis-sexual society, that's their term, that that you should have to think about it and work through it. And I think that's really kind of weird because nobody tell me that I should have to work through my problem having sex with women because I'm not attracted, so I can, right? But somehow, in this instance, they should have to see it.
Sure,
that's where I think that's the line across there.
Yeah, I hear you, man. Like, there are definitely some examples which get shared a lot around anti-trans spaces of, like, some teenager on TikTok saying, if you're not attracted to vaginas, then you should just work through the problem and get over it. And that's garbage. Like, that is hands down a garbage position. Whoever says that can fuck off. I fully disagree with them. I've been publicly disagreeing with them loudly for years now. Those people do exist. There are... on the internet, you can find anyone with any stupid view that you would possibly imagine. And the reality is, if you're not attracted to, if for you fucking love cock, if that is a thing that you absolutely need in someone, they need to have a really magnificent, beautiful penis, then if you meet somebody who doesn't have one, you're not going to be attracted to them. That's just that's how some people's brain works. What is important, though, is that isn't how everyone's brains work. And if you meet some guy and then it's a trans guy and he hasn't had surgery or whatever, and you're not attracted to him for whatever reason, and just be like, I'm sorry, you're not my type. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you were to then say, sorry, Arden, and sorry, Min, just to do my final sentence, if you were to then say something like, I'm not attracted to any trans men because I'm only attracted to, real men or something, then that is when it becomes a garbage position because attraction is multifaceted, and also you're like insulting all these other people. I mean, I get what some people are trying to say with that, but the point is, a lot of guys who you walk down the street and you'd be like, oh, he's hot. Maybe one of them's a trans man. And maybe if it came to sexy time, you would no longer be attracted. Maybe you would be. But the point is it's just not straightforward, and trans people mess up all of these kind of binary systems people have. Then that's the point I'd make.
Yeah, and to piggyback off that, where I was going to go is sure, I definitely have seen those people who are like, oh, if you don't like vagina, you just have to work through it. But what I usually see is trans people making the case that what Katy just said and what I have talked about multiple times on this show, where it's like, if you're saying you aren't attracted to trans women, period, but you're attracted to women, I don't actually believe that you know what the words you're using mean, and I don't believe you. But that's not me saying you have to sleep with a trans woman, you have to suck a girl dick, right? But that's usually what I see TERFs and gender criticals misrepresenting our position as. When we're talking about, evaluating the ways your prejudice has influenced your concepts of what you're attracted to, and thinking that you can just automatically super sense or detect trans women walking down the street and they'll like just be not on your attraction board, is just not, it's a fantasy. That's not how those things work. But they usually get misrepresented as the extremist position. So usually when I hear people say stuff like what you said, Min, extreme trans activists aren't respecting the boundaries. Is that really what's happening? Or are the actual well-reasoned positions that trans people are putting forth being misrepresented that way to misconstrue trans activists as violating people's boundaries? Because that seems the far more likely reality to me.
Yeah, because I guess in my position, I grew up in a culture that's really homophobic. So when thank you, Katy. So when I used to think about transition to woman, because to be honest, because I thought it would make more sense because I'm better adapt in the woman's role. And when I came to accepting myself, I accept the fact I like men. I should just have to live with that. But then, so some people tell me that you should have to like this, or like you don't like this because of some kind of this society like trying to impose it. I find it pretty weird, but I'm not really not offended like all the gay men, but that's how I see them when I say that.
You know what, man? If next time someone says that to you, get this little clip and be like, you know what? You might think that, but the best trans activist in the world, Katy Montgomerie, says, fuck off. Men attracted to is attracted to, and that doesn't include you, so get bent. So that's my maybe get bent is not.
Yeah, that's what I like. I think like you and Aron are much more level-headed than the activists I came across on YouTube.
I would say that
on
most
Reddit
are more like us.
Yeah,
there are some idiots, and there are some people pretending to be trans people to wind other people up. So
but I don't want to waste a lot.
Yeah, sorry.
We do go. I don't want to waste a lot of more time that you have. So the other thing that I want to briefly mention is the mandate of kind of language that you had to call me like she, her pronoun, for example, because when I look at YouTube,
I'm so sorry. This is just a huge detour, and while I totally appreciate it, and you've been a good caller, I would invite you to call back next week for this topic, because this is just too much of a detour. So
thank you. Sorry for taking a lot of time.
No worries.
Thank you.
Thanks. Have a good one.
Bye.
Yeah, when particularly
shit.
You should go to our Patreon. We have a Patreon, and it's
that was intentional.
How this show runs. Patreon / call the line, probably. I don't know. I didn't actually read what came up, but that's where you should go, and you should support us. And we have like monthly host hangouts now, so you can come out and hang out with us. But what I was just going to say on that last topic is, something like 70%. I would say most trans women would probably agree with this. Something like 70% of the men who say, "Oh, I'm not attracted to trans women," when none of their mates are looking, they're absolutely attracted to trans women. Over half, I reckon.
Oh yeah,
there are absolutely some guys who are just not into various combinations of sexual characteristics.
There was a great a graph posted by Nominal Naomi, who's been on this show before, that was like the rates of, here we go, data suggests that the more Republican, based on 2020 presidential voting data, a metro area is, the more that area searches for transgender related porn. It's like a pretty clean correlation
as well.
But anyway, we have other callers to get to. All right, who got 4-3's been on the line the longest.
Yeah, okay, let's do that one.
All right. We're going to take
pointless philosophical conversation.
Opal in Massachusetts, she, her. Opal, you are live on Transatlantic. What's going on?
Hi.
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 Hello. I wanted to ask about what you both thought about the morality of purposefully transgendering a cis bigot for either retaliatory purposes or for not necessarily instructional, but like demonstrative purposes.
Do you mean misgendering?
Yes.
Okay, I might have misheard what you said, but yeah, okay. What do you think, Arden?
So I think I might have even suggested this before doing this. If you're asking me right now, I wouldn't say that I think it's necessarily a good thing. There's probably a good argument for the way it, misgendering as a weapon in general should just be stopped altogether. Sure, I agree with that. But if you're gonna, on the list of things that people are doing that I'm going to spend my time and energy getting upset about or fighting back against, I really don't think that's high on the list for me. But I think I could probably see some reasonable arguments being made for that you just shouldn't ever use misgendering as a retaliatory tactic in general. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the two sides of this argument in my mind are people are watching, and if you make it clear that misgendering people is unacceptable, that might be the vibe they get, and that might be what they learn, and then they might not do it. So that's just kind of a good thing. And also, often when you do, a lot of misgendering, cis people misgender cis people more than anything else. Like there are a certain little cult of cis people whose entire life is all about misgendering trans people, but like guys calling each other girls as an insult is like a whole flipping centuries long meme. And they do it because they think women are worse than men, and that's garbage. And you don't want to contribute, even accidentally or even like optically appear to contribute to some kind of thing like that either, or also calling like certain groups of women men as a way of devaluing them. So there's more to it than just the intent of hurting trans people. The problem is that the issue with misgendering a cis man, in most cases, most of the time the intent is to say that he's inferior as a man, and most of the time that people misgender cis women, it's to say that she's not a real woman or inferior in some way as a woman. The reason that most people misgender trans people is as part of justification for taking away our human rights. They already are treating us as subhuman. When they say, Katy Montgomerie is a man, they're not saying, oh, I acknowledge that men are of a superior status in patriarchy and that's where I think she sits. What they're saying is Katy Montgomerie should be banned from public spaces and have her medication taken away. So that's kind of the intent behind the misgendering. If you are in an argument with someone and they're calling you the wrong thing, and your intention of misgendering them back is to be like, well, I want them to know what it feels like, then yeah, maybe it looks like one of the bad reasons to misgender, which I was just saying. But your actual intent is one to just punch the bully back after they've been punching you. So they know what it's like. I would say that, intent is important, but also you've got to consider the appearance of things. And also it doesn't really work because to them, when you do that, it kind of feels like you're flailing because they feel like, oh, I have something which hurts this person, so I'm going to do it. And then when they try and do it back to you, you'll be like, oh, it must be working then because they're getting flustered and they're kind of losing their cool, and so they'll just do it more and they'll just ignore you. Even if in a different context, if they were at work and their boss came in and said it to them, they probably would be upset. Because they're in a position where they're already bullying you, it just doesn't really work on them. So you need to come in from a different angle. I would say, yeah, like Arden, I don't really care, but some of the intentions can be bad. How does that address your question?
Yeah, so like that valid feeling, but like way too much baggage, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's
That
just
makes
better
sense.
things to do. I mean, like, if some fucking knobhead is coming and saying trans people shouldn't have human rights and they're calling you, the wrong pronouns or something, or make some made up name for you, which they like to do, like, what is worse? Is it me saying, oh, well, actually, you're a woman? Or is it worse me saying, mate, you follow like a load of fascists and you seem to be racist, according to your profile, so
I
get
think
fucked. Like,
the
they're worse
situations
things.
where I've seen it used that I was like not particularly bothered by is more like so when I was like super super early in transition, like as a little teenager, I remember going out to like dinner with my family, and like the waitress would say like, "Oh, what would you like, miss?" And then my parents would be like, "Yes, my son will have blah 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 blah." And like in response, I can be like, "Thank you, father," to my mom, kind of thing, where it like
Yeah.
seems more like cheeky and kind of like the waitress isn't gonna really know. It's not really like it's just kind of like a I don't know. It's not quite as high stakes as when like an actual bigot and like fascist kind of person is like, you're a man and you're like, you're a woman. Like, obviously, that doesn't have the same impact as a much more personal sort of way to just
Yeah.
kind of like remind someone, hey, you're doing this thing to me publicly. It doesn't feel good. Yeah.
With some of my friends, I did that. When they said the wrong name, I would just be like, thanks, and then say the wrong name for them. And
Yeah.
they'd be like, oh, yeah, I'm sorry. And I'd be like, it's all right.
Right.
Yeah, that's
So,
that's kind of more the area I was talking about. I totally like agree in terms of the like in the debate circles, so to speak. That would definitely not. It wouldn't be a good strategy. But yeah, that's more the kind of speed I meant.
Yeah.
sometimes, because I've thought about this before, in like debate, which I think is kind of a waste of time, and like, these kind of performative one versus one Ben Shapiro style debates where people just gish gallop at each other and there's no real debating done because real debate's done in writing. In our situation, depending on, because it's all about performance, these kind of debates are 99% performance, 1% substance. If you could pull it off, it could work, because if they are misgendering you to hurt you and you just kind of do not care about it at all, that makes them look like a child. And if you start doing it back, it just drags everyone down. Everyone just looks like an idiot, and the whole thing's bullshit. And your purpose for being in a debate is to humiliate the other person, because no one's gonna learn anything. But if they are calling you the wrong thing and there's several people there, if you start calling everyone the wrong thing and it's really confusing and hard to follow, that is kind of making a point. Like, you see the situation like where these conservatives like Ben Shapiro are arguing with some trans person and they keep saying she, I mean he, because they actually saw her as a woman, said the right pronouns, and then had to correct the mine. If you then do that back, it just shows how ridiculous it is. Or you'd be like, yeah, that's what she said earlier, and they're like, who? You're like, oh, sorry, I meant Ben, like Shapiro. And it's just like, see, it's stupid if you call the people the wrong thing. No one knows what the hell's going on. So that could be an argument strategy, but it's very specific. I just sort of thought about it before, but
Yeah.
whatever.
I'm sorry, it wasn't
Yeah, so less like weaponization and more of like the demonstrative
yeah.
kind.
Yeah, I think it's more like an educational opportunity in that situation. But yeah, as for the goal of like retaliation, I think it's probably generally speaking not worth it. But I'm sorry there wasn't more to add to that. I feel like that's pretty basic, but I don't have anything else to add to that. If that's cool with you.
So that was kind of it. I did have like one
Okay,
super
great.
quick question if you had a little bit of time.
Go for it.
As a fairly baby trans myself, and American schooling system has perhaps sexual education regardless, are there any good resources to reach out for, like, real sex ed for us?
Sex ed specifically for like trans people? I mean, there's definitely a lot of YouTubers who've been doing sex positive content for like LGBT people generally for like years and years. I mean, I think Lacey Green's kind of gone off like on a turf spin the last couple years. I'm not entirely sure that's what it looked like, but back when I was a teenager, she was actually like super pro LGBT and like very sex positive. I used to love her content when I was a teenager. Yeah, there's stuff out there. I don't have any like formal resources or anything though to point you to, not off the top of my head. But if anyone in chat has any, please feel free to.
Yeah, I didn't really know the answer to that question either. I mean, I would say, like, check out the big charities, and they might have like a section or a pointer into a certain direction. But yeah, I'm not entirely sure. I'll try and find out.
Cool.
Yeah.
American Youth
Sorry,
Better Sex
Opal.
Ed across
Good luck
the
with
board
that one.
anyways, but
Yeah. Cool. Thank you, Opal. I appreciate it, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.
thank you for taking my
Bye.
call. Bye.
All right. One of the callers we had dropped, which, it was a trans women in sports call, so I'm not too upset about it. We've done that topic so many fucking times. All right, let's just hit them in the order they've come in, I guess, since we've only got 2 on the line right now. Let's go for Estelle in Quebec. Estelle, you are live on Transatlantic. What's going on?
All right. Well, I'm from Quebec, Canada, and I've seen it feels very overwhelming to see like all the rise in the movements. There's the marches that happened yesterday that just like it's like a few months ago I was just watching from the sidelines, watching the entire trans movement happening in England and the US, and now it seems the wave has come to here, and like I don't really know what to do about it. Feels extremely overwhelming.
Yeah, it can be really scary, and I think the first thing to remember is there have always been these kind of movements, and most of the time they come to nothing. These bigoted, reactionary people are always trying to find something to get in a rage about, and a couple of decades ago they did exactly this about gay people. And in some places, they managed to harm gay people with legislation, which generally lasted a few years and disappeared. Even in the UK, where we had one that lasted a couple of decades, it was banning teaching about gay people in schools, which is terrible and, ended some people's lives indirectly and ruined a whole generation's understanding of sexuality. But we beat it, and it's like moved on, and many of the people from that era survived to see, gay rights come up to a mainstream position, and all the homophobes are still alive to see it all crumbling. Everything they ever did is a big failure, which is quite satisfying. So do you always try and remember that, this is how reactionary movements work, and we are kind of around the worst part of it around now, and it's going to be the next 10 years. Maybe it'll get a little worse. We'll have to see, but it'll kind of trail off. And the other thing that I always try and remember is that trans people before us had absolutely nothing, and they managed to come through. Like, there were trans people who transitioned in the 50s and stuff, and even before, trans people who transitioned in the 30s, just mental, like how they had absolutely no network, they had no medical knowledge, they had, such high stakes, fit into society or die, basically. And in the 30s, they had, fascism round one going on. But some of them at least managed to fight through, and then the next generation of trans people had a little bit of a thing to stand on, and they managed to do even better. And then they're the next generation, and now we're like the next generation on top, and we have had the most institutional support, the most social support, the most strongest networks that trans people have ever had. This is like the first time in history where trans people have been able to organize. So if the people who came before us got through, and I mean, smashed it, set up the foundations for, what me and Arden are doing and for my transition and stuff, then what we're going to be able to do is going to be incredible. And in that sense, the transphobes have already lost. They've lost the super long term, which is kids nowadays know what a trans person is and they don't care. Like, that's it. That's game over for them. They're never going to be able to get that back. So now we've just got to ride out the bullshit. So keep your eye on that and keep remembering that, we'll get through it. And the odds are you personally will get through this.
Yeah.
The other thing to do is, like, on a practical side of things, if you're in a position where you can, I put myself in the firing line quite a lot, but there are some people who do way more than me, and they're absolute heroes for doing it. They know they can do that to some degree, and sometimes it's too much, but, you learn what you can take. And if that's not you, then that's fine. Don't feel pressured to do it. If you need to lie low, if you need to be safe, if you need to, change job or whatever, yes, it's grim that you would have to do that, but you've got to live your own life first. So you see all these marches going on, you've got to think, does this directly personally affect me right now? Well, if you go out on a counter protest, maybe it will. Maybe the Nazis will show up with baseball bats or something. Like, it's horrific. That could happen. It does happen. And if you're not at the protest, you're slightly safer. And if they're trying to change the laws, do the laws directly affect you? Like, if they're banning healthcare for trans kids, that's horrific. People will die. Maybe you should spend some of your time campaigning against that. However, if you are not personally a trans child or the parent of one, it's not directly affecting you, and you can not feel like, it's very easy to feel overwhelmed by that when the people who are directly affected, need your strength. So you need to be like, you know what? This doesn't affect me directly. I am safe. I can live another day. Tomorrow I will be okay. Chill out. Get grounded. Let the panic subside, and then be like, what can I do to help? And that's kind of how it goes. In my experience, when the anti-trans side either has a really big win or when they gain some momentum, I have a little panic. I have a few days where I feel terrible. And then I reassess what's actually happened. Because lots of the time, the media's all bluster and they're like, they're going to ban trans people from existing. And then it turns out that what they're actually doing is, they're considering a law in one state, and it's got to go through 10 layers of politics first to get there. And, all this kind of stuff. And you're like, okay, what has actually happened in my life today? Is it worse than it was yesterday? No. Okay. That means I'm okay today and I can plan for tomorrow. So that's my other kind of way of looking at things.
Yeah.
So,
but the way I see it, like, the way those laws are shaped or formed, it's not like, even if they don't think that it's gonna pass or it's gonna have any effect, the law by itself contributes to this sentiment of
definitely
hopelessness that many trans people have, a bit like me.
And that's the point. That's the point. Like, they writing anti-trans laws is free for them. It's nothing. Like, if anything, it's a little career boost because they get their name on something, and all the other Republicans and right-wing knobheads see them being horrible to people, and that, advances their career. They might get more donations, all this kind of stuff. It costs them nothing, and for us, it's terrible. And that's part of what they want to do. They want to just have this constant onslaught. They want trans people to feel like giving up. And it's very easy to say, but once you kind of really on board and realize that's what they're doing, it becomes a lot easier to not panic about it. That propaganda is so important to them. Making a story out of nothing. That's why you see in the UK, like the Times and the Daily Mail, every single day do an anti-trans story. And sometimes it'll be, the government is considering, banning trans people from public or whatever. And that's terrifying. But lots of the time it'll be like, oh yeah, this new thing they're going to change it and it's going to be bad for trans people. And then it turns out it's like Guildford City Council art donation has now got a gender critical person on the board out of 5 votes, and they told her to fuck off and she's being cancelled, and like, it just means nothing. But they want to keep this kind of constant onslaught going to make you feel panicked and demoralized. But most of it, once you've seen like 100 different ones, you're like, oh, there aren't 100 different ones. There's 10 different ones. They just recycle, and you kind of roll your eyes at it. It is very easy to think if they throw enough stuff at the wall, some of it will stick, and that is true, but most of it won't. And if you panic every single time something happens, it will break you. Absolutely. So you need to like snap yourself out of it to some degree. And sorry if that sounds kind of harsh, but this is kind of advice to me because I always panic too. So
I think also something that helps with it is just, I don't know how far into your transition or how long you've been transitioning, Estelle, or identifying as trans. But I also think there's something to be said about just the length of time you've endured these waves, because much like Katie's saying, a lot of it doesn't stick. I don't know, you just start to get a better sense of what is actually worth panicking about, what is worth devoting your energy to, and what is something where it's like, you know what, maybe today I just need to go out with a friend and do something that's a completely unrelated to trans issues, and just make myself feel like, okay, the people in my life, the people in my community are clearly not the people who I'm seeing march, at the Toronto City Hall or whatever. And at least in the situation with Canada, there's a lot of states in the US where every government body in the state is on board with the anti-trans agenda. Toronto raised the trans flag and said transphobia is not welcome here. Like,
Justin
I don't think
Trudeau tweeted it out. Like,
like not. I realize that's kind of trivial a little bit. That doesn't change your material conditions or make you feel more safe, probably, but that is a level of institutional support that a lot of people and a lot of who are dealing with these waves also don't see. So I think there are positives through the scary wave, but I definitely empathize deeply with the fear and the anxiety that comes with seeing these things. I can't tell you how many times over the last few years doing the show and before the show where a law would get dropped and I would like nearly start doomsday prepping. I'm like, all right, I got to have a go bag. I got to make sure I know how to like get food, because who knows what's going to happen? Who knows when I'm going to be safe? Like that is how I felt many different times in the last few years. And by and large, it hasn't quite gotten to that place yet. And I do think we are more like a political football and less like an actual, like they're the things that they say about trans people, I think, are less a destination that we'll actually arrive at and more of just a convenient talking point and like fundraising, avenue.
Yeah.
If I may, like, and this seems like a fundamental flaw with our political system that like those rights are taken as games to be played. That's like their the state has so much power in just discussing those things. I mean, anyway, I'm not going to do a tirade about that, but yeah, I feel so powerless to affect anything to like help other people. I don't see. I'm kind of neat right now, so.
Yeah, it can be easy to feel powerless, but lots of these people who are opposing your rights are also powerless. Like, can be very easy. Like I was saying about their propaganda, they're good at propaganda, but also what they like to do is say they're more powerful than they are. And what we end up doing is saying we're less powerful than we are. Like, because we're on the defense and we're the ones being attacked, it can be easy to feel powerless. And then you say this out of desperation. They're all just like airheads, and they'll be, saying that they always start, they're all buying their blue ticks on Twitter, and they're starting all their messages with, "This is huge, breaking news." Like, but then it's just nothing. It's meaningless. It's just some little attention grab. They're trying to, feel powerful. And there's only so many times that they can say, "This is huge. Norway has banned trans healthcare." Like, they say every single 3 months for like the last 7 years or something, and like they still haven't fucking banned it. So, there's only so many times that they can exaggerate some rumor to the point of where it's a fact and they are the one to break the news before you realize that they're powerless too. They've got nothing. And I don't have much faith in the systems we have, but they're not 100% a sham. And when there's some process where they have to ask experts or they have to do some impact assessment or something, they get someone whose full-time job is to analyze the data, then it's not going to say what they want. And then they'll have wasted ages on it and nothing will happen. And really, the main crime with lots of it is trans rights were slowly progressing and they have stopped progressing and they will not progress for years. And we'll be stuck with what we have and maybe take a step back into some places. But unless you end up with some kind of runaway fascist hellhole nightmare government that really does do some kind of authoritarian nightmare like in Hungary or something, then it's unlikely that it will actually affect you in the way that all of these wackos are trying to say it will. I know that it's hard, Estelle, but you've got this. Hang in there. Even if all you do is hang out with your friends, they'll know a trans person and they'll be like, well, Estelle's all right, so I'm not going to join this fucking march against human rights.
Mhm.
And there's only got to be, a few hundred of you scattered around the state, and then that's hundreds of people who are on your side. So you are making a difference. And even if you've got no friends,
Thank you.
you're on this show.
Well, thank you. I really need those words of encouragement.
Yeah,
I,
you're doing great.
I just wanted to talk about not the last caller, but the one before. Like, if we're talking about sexual attraction, people who say they are same-sex attracted, they aren't really. They're actually saying they're not attracted to human beings. They're only attracted.
Yeah, I think
to...
there's I think it's a big topic that we could go off on. Perhaps call in about this another time. I think I know what you're kind of referencing to. I would say that very few people are attracted solely to one single sex characteristic, and no one is attracted to gametes. However, when they say that isn't really what they mean, and gender critical propaganda has made it all confusing. Anyway, call in with that another time, Estelle, and we'll talk to you in the future. Thanks for calling in and hang in there. I would like to do one more call at least. I would like to do 15-3. Can we? Are you up for that?
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to also say before we pull them on, there's someone on the line who I do want to talk to. It's actually somebody who debated Matt a little while ago.
Oh,
Issa's on the line, and Issa, I think you're great, and I love watching your debate, and you're my favorite person that Matt's debated, so you should call in and we can talk again soon. I'm sorry we couldn't get to you today.
I mean, we could do that. We could do that one instead if you'd rather.
No, I think Gabriel's more fitting for the show, so we'll take Gabriel.
Well, we are going to take Gabrielle in Canada, and she says that speech should not be compelled. Gabrielle, why is that your position?
Well, first, I'm a man, not a she.
But, thanks for letting me know.
Oh, that's all good. It's all good. Well, I just don't think that on the basis of pronouns or in line with the trans ideology that it should be compelled, because I don't think that there's a basis for it.
When you say compelled though, is that what you just did to me? Because I assumed you were she, her, and then you said that's not me, and I was like, oh,
you said I'm a man, not a she, which she
There's a difference between compelling and correcting. You can say that's
my position. That's my position though, isn't it? My position is the same. Like if you assumed me wrong, I'd just be like, oh, my name's Katie and I'm she and I'm a woman, thanks. And then you could just be like, oh, okay. Right?
Sure, but I think that people reserve the right to speak however they please, for better or for worse.
Yeah, but I could call you the wrong thing, right? when you
Sure.
said, "Oh, actually, I'm a man," I could say, "Well, fuck you. I'm going to call you she anyway," and then you could be like, "Well, who the fuck is this prick?" Like, you would instantly think I was a loser, right? Because I would.
Sure, that could happen. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But I think
Yeah,
that people just need
so
to
what's the
evaluate.
difference?
Yeah, go ahead.
Like, if
Sorry.
I did that, if I was like, nah, I'm gonna call you a different name, and I'm gonna call you the wrong thing, you would be like, Katie, Isabel, and I mean, and then you may even be horrible to me in response, and I'd be like, you trying to force me to change my view? Are you trying to compel my speech? And you'd be like, no, I'm just asking you to call me the right thing, the same thing that everyone in my entire life calls me. Can't you just be normal, please? I mean, my
But
point
the
is,
obvious,
why is it different for you than for me?
sure. Yeah, I think the obvious thing that needs to be substantiated is whether or not the word used to describe the person, whether it's a pronoun or a name, is actually can actually be truly predicated of the person. So if I were to make a claim that I would like to be referred to as some type of animal, I wouldn't expect people to conform to that because it's simply not true. Whether it's going to make me feel better or not is irrelevant as far as I'm concerned.
But do you want to be an animal?
Let's say I did, and it's hypothetical.
Yeah, but
Let's
does
say
anyone? Is that actually a real thing? Because like trans people really exist.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, I can give you some. Sure. Yes, there are people.
You want me to
where I
refer
live
to you
in
as
Canada.
Piglet?
Let's say I did. What's your?
No,
like,
but
why
you don't.
wouldn't you do that?
But
if
you
I wanted
don't, do
to?
you? It's the point.
Well, it's a hypothetical.
Yeah, I know, but
What
the thing is that trans people really do exist. So I can say I have actually transitioned and I'm one of these people, and I would like to be called she, her, and that's what every single person who I meet on the street and every single person in my life calls me, and everyone at work and everything calls me, apart from a few bellends on the internet who call me he specifically because they hate trans people and they want to take away their human rights. Like, that's a real thing. That's a real debate. And the reason I would say, if someone then said, oh, Katie, he says this, I'd be like, well, this person is a dickhead. And the reason they're doing that is, one, because they intentionally want to hurt me, and two, because they don't think I should have human rights. And then you say, oh, but what if I wanted to be a pig? I'd be like, well, I mean, I don't really care, mate. Like, if you said that, I'd just be like, all right, you can go and oink away to yourself and eat some apple cores or something. Like, it doesn't actually affect me. It's not a real thing. It's not a real thing anywhere in the world, as far as I know. And if it was, it just wouldn't really matter. Like, I get the argument that people, when they say this, is should we instantly believe anyone's self-description? And like, no, if you said, my name's Gabriel and I am the king, you should refer to me as Your Majesty because I'm superior to you and I'm God's chosen, I'd be like, nah, seems stupid. Like, some people come up with things that are ridiculous, but in real life, actually, what you actually said was, I'm Gabriel and I'm a man. And I was like, oh, that's cool, because that's a normal human interaction, and that's an actual thing that actually happens all around the world all the time. And I feel like the main argument strategy against that is to try and conflate those two situations. Like, hypothetically, what if someone was so delusional that they didn't know what whether they were a man or a woman? What if they actually genuinely thought they were an alien? Should we have to be forced to believe that they're an alien? No, but that's not a real situation, and I just don't care.
Okay, can I respond to that?
Yeah, please do.
Sure. Okay. Well, I think that regardless of how many people in one's life acquiesce to calling them whatever they prefer, one still needs to contend with the question of whether or not the word, which conveys some relationship between reality and individual perception, whether the reality is actually true. It doesn't matter if 1,000 people out of 1,000 decide to call you your preferred pronoun. What matters is whether or not the word in question is in fact properly predicated of you. And so I think that needs to be contended.
There's no supernatural truth to pronouns. We just made them up. Like, they're just words we use in society to address each other. And there's not like some hidden truth value. It's not like I'm saying 2 plus 2 is 5 and everyone's just agreeing with me. Like, she is just a
But would
word
you say
we
that there's
use when we're
meaning behind
referring
it?
to people. Huh?
Would you say that there's meaning behind it? It doesn't need to be supernatural truth. It needs to.
If someone
there's
walked
meaning.
into a room, yeah, of course it's a shared understanding that we all have. And if someone walked
And
into a
what does it
room and there was
mean?
a bunch
What
of
does
men
it
and
mean?
women, and if we walked into a room and there was a bunch of men and women, and you were like, could we have all the women on this side and all the men on that side? And then I went over to the women's side and you were like, no, you're on the wrong side. You've got to go over there. Everyone would be like, what the hell is going on? You haven't properly conveyed the meaning here at all. And you were like, he's on the wrong side. They'd be like, who? Who are you even talking about? Like, what is
No,
going
it would
on? The
depend on
meaning
which
that,
circles you're in, certainly.
well, it would
Like,
depend on whether if I was surrounded by gender critical cultists who all know my name and follow all my tweets and write weird things about me, then they might know who I am. Yeah. If it was just a
Or they
random
can just
selection
tell
of
by
people off the
looking
street,
at you. They can
well,
simply
maybe
tell
some
by
people
looking at
can,
you.
and maybe some people can't. But in my day-to-day life and experience, that isn't something that happens or comes up. But I mean, regardless of that, when you're saying you're communicating meaning, and now you're arguing that it depends on who is doing it, that's because it's subjective, unlike maths. So the whole point in using these pronouns is for communicating ideas to someone. And if you've got this idea that I look like a man and have a magic male soul or whatever, and that's the information you're trying to communicate to people, maybe you live in some weird place where that's information that everyone just shares and they all agrees. You know, that wouldn't work where I'm from in the UK. No one would know what the hell you're going on about, and they would all think you're a weirdo. But, you know, it's just communication, isn't it? But the point is if you did do that and you were like, well, actually, I'm going to call you this because I think there's some, you know, magical truth value that I'm revealing by saying that, I would be like, well, there isn't. And also, I think you're a dickhead.
Well, I don't think that it is subjective. I think that it's in fact objective.
But you did just
Some
say it
people-
was subjective.
I said what was subjective.
How people perceive me.
No, I said depending on the circle, people might address you a certain way. That doesn't mean that the word or the meaning is subjective. It simply means that some people could be incorrect. That's all that it means. Some people are correct and some
Do you
people are
think
incorrect.
words have objective meanings?
Well, it depends on the type of word. Some things are man-made, and so I would say that there's probably no objective
Like
meaning.
pronouns.
So if we were to define something like a chair,
Pronouns
what is the
are
essence of
man-made.
chair? I would say that's subject. Well, maybe the verbal
So a
use
tree
of pronouns
subjective.
are man-made. What do you mean by is the thing that the word tree represents subjective? Is that what you mean?
Or fish. That's an easier one.
Well, it's twofold, right? Like you could say that the word itself is malleable and subjective, but the reality that it represents is not, right? So that's
Fish
that's
isn't
how
just
people.
one biological category, is it? It's just a general word for a whole bunch of stuff that is distantly related that just happens to swim in the sea. Maybe I'm going in too hard on this, because basically where we'll go with this is we can pick something, like you've tried to divide things into man-made and natural. And then what my argument would be then is, if we had a full hour to go through this, is that I would say, well, these kind of natural definitions that you kind of believe in don't really exist. There are understandings of patterns. And, you know, like the reason I kind of go to species is because it's a really good example. By the way, are you the person? You're not the person that I've been talking to on Twitter, are you?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Right. Well, because I've just been having a similar conversation in Twitter for a little while. So the point, it's quite a big topic, so I'm trying to come in with a quick way to describe all this, but it's kind of hard to without cutting a load of corners.
Sure.
But I guess basically what I'm saying is that the claim that words have objective meanings, I don't think you can substantiate.
Well, can I let me try briefly. I don't want to take up too much of your time. I'm sure you're busy, but what I mean is that what I mean by distinguishing between natural and unnatural and artificial, I think that's a better word for it, is simply that there are things like chair, for example. You could talk to 100 people, and they might all have a different concept of what that means in reality, and that's fair because it's something that is, well, it simply doesn't exist naturally. But you could talk about a natural phenomenon like a cat or something like that. Now, the word that people use to describe the reality of cat varies across different languages, but the reality is still constant. And so I would say that this is also true of sexuality.
It's
that
not
you might have different language
actually,
to describe.
though. That's the issue. Is, I mean, so this, I guess, is why I went to species. Is in our day-to-day life when we encounter cats, you can easily distinguish a cat from most of the other things around you, animals and non-animals. And if you say cat, everyone knows what you mean, and no one's really going to have an argument about whether something is a cat or not. If it's like a physical, actual, living cat. But if you go back in time, or you talk to someone who's like a paleontologist, or someone who studies genetics or biology, and you look at where cats originated and look at the common ancestor between, say, a cat and a human, which we do have at some point along the evolutionary line in the last 100 million years or so, humans and cats became distinct things that we can instantly recognize, and we say that is a human and that is a cat. But at some point, we were the same thing, and actually, this common ancestor we have, you wouldn't say was a cat or a human, and that diverged into two different species, which then became cats and humans. But even when it diverged, it wasn't cats and humans. And actually, if you saw the full lineage all the way back from the first ever life form to you, if you were to point where the first human was, there would be a huge argument about it. No one would be able to say this particular individual was the first human. And there's no actual way. Like, species is a really complicated thing to define. And if you go and look up, like, even if you just go on the Wikipedia for species, for example, and look up what the definition of it is, lots of people say, oh, well, it's when members of a group can mate with other members of a group and produce fertile offspring. But inherently, this definition is a population level definition, because if you just picked one particular individual and another particular individual, and they mated and they produced an offspring, maybe it would be infertile for different reasons, or maybe they wouldn't be able to produce an offspring. And then you couldn't then come to the conclusion they were definitely different members of different species, because there could be a whole number of factors. So when they are trying to define where the edges of species are, there is actually loads of room for argument about it. And the reality is, in our day-to-day lives, we don't really see this gray area. It's just much easier to look at on evolutionary timescales. But you do actually see it when it comes to other animals. There's this really good... Sorry, I feel like Arden's about to cut in. I'm about to go off on some rant about lizards. I'm about to take it to lizards, Arden.
Well, I'm not going to complain about lizards. If you're going to talk about lizards, go on lizards.
You might even know the lizard, right? And also you might be able to find out about it if you don't know. But basically, often when we're talking about species, if we get to the point where, say, there's an island and there's a volcanic eruption, it splits in two, and there's like a lizard that is present on this whole island, and now it's on two separate islands, after a long time, they may well differentiate into different species. Even if it's just through random differentiation, or they might be on the sunny side and the non-sunny side, they might adapt to changes in their environment. And eventually, you would say they become different species. And someone who studies species might say, oh, it's when they become differentiated enough, even though maybe they can still reproduce. But generally, it's when they can no longer produce fertile offspring with each other on a population level. However, there is this lizard, and I don't know what the lizard's called, and I've forgotten, but it lives, I think it's down the whole of the west coast of the Americas. And lizards in the center can mate and produce fertile offspring with the lizards just north of them. and lizards from there can mate with the ones just north of them, and lizards with them can mate just north of them, and the whole way up they can mate with each other. So all the lizards in their local area can have sexy time, and they can make eggs, and then their eggs make more eggs and stuff. And it's the same all the way down south. However, if you take lizards from the southernmost point and the northernmost point, they can't mate and produce fertile offspring. And all of these lizards exist at the same time. And they're kind of, if you look at the two ends, separate species, but you can find populations the whole way across which can mate with each other. And it's just because they've varied a little bit on the way down. So if you were someone who lived in the north, you'd be like, this is X lizard, this is called a Gabriel lizard. And if you talk to someone in the south, they'd be like, this is an Aron lizard. That's not the same species as my one at all. They look different. They can't even mate and produce eggs. But if you take a few steps and you go a few kilometers up, and then you get some of those lizards, and you take a few more kilometers up, and you keep going all the way up the Americas, they can all produce with each other, and you could argue they're all the same species. So it doesn't really have discrete edges, is what I'm saying. Arden, do you know the lizard?
I don't know the lizard, but as much as I would love to continue this conversation about, what natural
lizard
definitions are and all that, it has absolutely no bearing. And I mean, literally no bearing no, I'm not talking about you. I'm just saying the conversation about whether or not something actually is something, or natural definitions versus artificial, has literally nothing to do with whether or not speech should be compelled, or whether or not what trans people are advocating for is compelled speech.
Which we aren't. All I'm saying is, mate, at the start of this conversation, I assumed your gender wrong. You corrected me. That's exactly what I would like you to do when I correct you, and that's it. And if you believe in magic male souls, just believe in it. I don't care. If you think that I've got a true essence, a true definition, and pronouns of natural categories, I just don't give a fuck. Just don't be rude, and if you're not rude, then I'll treat you the same way, and if you are rude, I will treat you the same way. That's basically it. Don't bully people. Don't bully kids. That's my number one.
Interesting. Okay, well, that
go and look up the lizard. Go and look up species.
Yeah. All right.
I'm on mode. Someone cut me off.
we're cutting you off. Anyway, Gabriel, why don't you try again and try to actually make your case for whether or not speech should be compelled, or whether or not what trans people are doing is compelled speech, because it's not. And I'm not even going to give you a chance to reply, because honestly, your detour was so annoying and so irrelevant that I don't think you're worth it. And there's a chance you are someone who we've banned from the show. Not entirely sure. There is a Gabriel who does sound a little bit like you from Canada, who we banned for using a slur. And if it's you, don't fucking call this show. And if it's not you, call back and actually please make a case that's relevant to the question you asked.
Yeah, the problem is I've had all these arguments 100,000 times before, and I know where they go, and I know where the weaknesses are. So someone calls in and they say something about, as soon as they say natural definitions or something, I'm like, I know this. I know the counterexamples. We talk about species. It's really easy. When anyone says adult human female, talk about the other two things. Talking about sex is boring, and I mean, you can still do it, but I've done it so much. Talk about one of the other categories, like what's the natural definition of an adult? Because as soon as you give that definition, the gender critical person's going to say something really horrible really fast. And it's the same with species. They just don't know what they're talking about, and they haven't thought about it.
Yeah, and I'm going to blow your guys' minds, right? Colors are a measurable wavelength, right? Blue is a actual wavelength that you can measure of color. But if you go to like Russia, for example, they literally have two different concepts of light blue and dark blue. They are different names. Like we have pink for light red and red for red. Like there can be things that are natural and existed that humans didn't create or interact with. And the definitions and the words we use to interact with them and how we categorize them into different boxes is entirely subjective and subject to culture's influence. Like
color's really interesting, because the reason why we think that there are three primary colors is because we have three different like response types of cone, I think it is, or maybe rod. I can't remember which one it is. But we have 3 different ones that pick up on 3 different. They have like a frequency response, and there's 3 different peaks, and they happen to match up with red, blue, and green, which is why we see it. But if you were born with 2 or 4, then you would see the whole world differently, and you would be picking up the same information. The electromagnetic spectrum is exactly the same, but you would have a different concept of what primary colors are.
There's a fascinating experiment where they took a culture, and I don't remember from where they had different like
Blizzards.
What?
Oh no.
They had different colors that they used to describe. So there's lots of different ways that cultures have divided up colors, but like one primary way is like white, black, and like red, I think it is like a common way that many cultures have decided to categorize their colors. And then they just kind of decipher the shades within there. And there's one culture who uses, so we separate blue and green. But in this culture, they don't separate blue and green. So when you put a blue square on a circle of green squares, they had a hard time differentiating which was the square that was a different color. But because they have so many different concepts for the color green, and I looked at the color wheel, I cannot visually see the difference between the colors. But people from this culture can instantly identify the color that's different in the square purely because of their concept of language and color and what they're familiar looking at and differentiating between. Like, language has such an influence on your perception of like reality. Anyway,
I feel like I'm in tangent mode, but there's this constructed language, whatever the word is for it. Like, it's not a language that's naturally developed, and it was created by this one dude, and he sat down and created this language. And basically, you build up words like procedurally. So the first letter of the word represents whether it's going to be like an emotion or an object or a concept, and then the second letter then like narrows it down to like, good or bad or like animal or whatever. And like you build up words like that, and you can get these really long words where they mean specific, super hyper specific things, and you can create like emotions that you wouldn't have even thought of, and there is just a word for it. So it could be like the feeling of opening the fridge and expecting to see cheese and then being disappointed because you've run out, but then equally noticing that there's chocolate in there and feeling kind of happy at the same time whilst also disappointed. And like that could be a single word for this emotion. And if you have it as a single word, then maybe you can communicate it much easier to people, and people will recognize that emotion similarly in other places. I mean, it's like how we have this word Schadenfreude, or however you say it, which is like a German word for pleasure in other people's pain.
Yeah.
or whatever. And like that is just a normal concept to them because it's just a normal word in their vocabulary. And presumably it wasn't a normal word in English, hence why we've stolen their word. And it's not necessarily then something you can communicate to people as easily. And so it's not like maybe it affects how you see the world. I've done a really bad job of explaining it. Let's talk about this again.
All this to say is that words don't change the reality. No trans person is advocating that by using pronouns, we are changing like the whole natural definitions thing. I didn't talk the whole time because it was so stupid to me that I'm like, and so divergent from the actual original point. It's just not worth any energy. People are also pointing out that in Japan, a lot of people have a hard time differentiating blue-green because things that we call green, they call blue a lot, like lights and green tea, like traffic lights. That's a blue one at the bottom, not a green one to them. Even though it's like the same actual color. Also, somebody said pink isn't like red, and it absolutely is. It literally just is. I'm sorry you're confused. All right, you start.
All right, we're doing
I don't want to
super
read
chat.
this.
Wait. Okay, we're going to do some super chats, and the first one is going to be maths. So just so you know, if you send in a super chat of $5 or more, we will read it out. And if it is about how if you want to secretly be a pig, we're compelled to call you that, Arden will lose her mind. So let's get some people who want to be pigs in the super chats, because that is the only way we will know whether that thought experiment was total nonsense or not. But you can send in $5 or more. I think I've lost my mind on this episode.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm talking about. Okay, gonna do it. we have £5 from Sean Isherwood. If -1 is smaller than x, which is smaller than 1, sounds reasonable to me, then 1 over 1 minus x squared is the infinite sum 1 plus 2x plus 3x squared plus 4x cubed, etc. plus n plus 1. Oh, that's quite cool. Okay. Interesting.
I understood the
Hey,
first
okay.
handful of characters, and that is literally
It's
it.
just noticing a cool pattern.
Somebody just said pink is blue-green. You should shut the fuck up. Please stop chatting. I'm upset with you. A pistonist. $5 from I Got
Yes.
Cookies. Katie came in 7th in the Pokemon tournament. Plot twist, there were only 7 people playing.
No! It was 64. Get fucked.
Sure, Katie, sure. And the other, I can't do math. The other 57 were what? 5-year-olds? Is that what it was?
They were what?
5-year-olds?
No, there's
You're like,
3 different age
I won. I
categories.
beat all those kids.
It's the 18 plus category. You know.
Okay.
And several people there thought I was 25, so that was nice. $10 from Crusader Shark. Hi, I'm Natalie, she, they, from Alabama. I called the line, but had something come up and had to leave. Just looking for advice on coming out in the deep south with extremely fundy parents. That is a difficult situation. Perhaps call in and we can give better advice. Sorry, we didn't get to you.
Yeah.
Previously.
It's also one of these
I want to ask some
situations.
questions.
What I will say is that while I'm happy to tell you what I think and to empathize with you and how difficult the experience of coming out to conservative parents can be, there's not really advice I can give you that's going to make the situation easier or better. Nothing that I can't imagine you haven't heard or thought of on your own. So I'll just say that I feel you and we're here with you and we get what that's like. And you're definitely not alone in that experience. And there is another side to it.
My advice is find other people who have done that and hear their story.
Yeah.
And find people who had a bad experience and also had a good experience. There are some people who come out to super religious parents in bad places in the world and their parents, come around and support them and change their views. So it does happen.
Oh, also, I just had a memory of this week related to the kids identifying as animals thing. Apparently, in my hometown, in my high school that I went to, there is a student who allegedly identifies as a cat and meows at people. And this has been corroborated by a few people. I've considered calling the school because somebody said there was litter boxes in the bathroom. And that I'm not super convinced of. But
it's made up.
They basically said that this student just meows at people. And I was like, really? Because if that's the case, then I don't know what you people are upset about. Let the teenager fucking meow at people and let's not bully the teenager.
Also,
like, I just don't care.
Do people not remember being teenagers? Like, can you imagine if all the fucking teachers and adults were absolutely losing their mind because they thought that they were putting litter boxes in the school? This, like, obviously fake and stupid story. All of these adults who are meant to be clever and better and in charge of you and stuff. Of course you're going to meow to take the piss of them and make them lose their mind. Like, who wouldn't? Like, that's what kids do. They're like, oh, are you one of these adults who are so stupid that you believe that they're putting litter boxes in the schools? Like, meow. Like, oh, now they think I'm one of them. It's just so fucking dumb. Like, or most likely it's entirely invented, but also equally likely, I guess.
Well, I found out about it because a family member who's still a teenager was allegedly reprimanded for making fun of this kid. And I called out their parent, who's my family member, and said, hey, you're very pro-trans for me. Just to let you know, the language that your kid is using is very anti-trans. And they're like, well, this isn't a trans person. This is a cat person. And it's so different. I'm like, oh, goodness.
It's made up.
But that doesn't mean bullying them is okay, whether or not they're trans or whether or not it's made up. You shouldn't bully kids or endorse your kid bullying kids. That's just fucking wrong.
Adults. You can bully adults if you're a kid, maybe. No, actually, no, I'll take that back. Just don't bully people. $5 from Melissa. GC who want all on Twitter to know their women by... Oh, they want everyone on Twitter to know their women by putting female symbol in their display names. Reminds me of Nidran female. One was put off when I said that. Lol.
They're, yeah, I want to catch a turf male, evolve it into a turfo king.
The evolution of gender critical man is divorced gender critical man, actually.
Oh, right. You have to. I was gonna say, what's the evolution item? Because it's usually a moonstone, but I guess in this situation, it's
divorce papers.
Divorce papers. 120 Czech crowns from Naresh. To my Czech brain, it is absolutely wild that a public school might require you to wear a school uniform to be able to attend and not buy it for you. Yeah, like I said, I went to private school for K through 7, and they definitely did not buy it. They had a list of acceptable vendors, so there were like lower end options, but they were literally all khaki pants and a white polo. Like there was no diversity in the style; it was the same thing.
We had uniforms when I was at school. Yeah, they're rubbish. €5 from Andrew Botea. I have 3 Google accounts and I'm only 33% subscribed. Oh, Andrew, what are you doing? Come on. Keep it up. Bring it up. Whatever.
We'll get you more subscribed. Don't worry. $20 from Rockets Fan 611. Fuck ignorance and bigotry. I agree.
Yay.
Well, I don't even know if it's fuck ignorance. You can be ignorant. Just don't be a bigot. Don't be an asshole. You cannot understand things. That's allowed. Just don't be shitty about it.
£10 from Jackie Greenland. Can't catch it live tonight, but greetings from Indigo. Hope there are some great calls. Hashtag Team Katy. Yay, minus 49.
I don't know where Indigo is, but yeah, I figure,
I got Pokemon.
Katie's been just really awful lately, and I thought we should start on this would make things more fair.
Come on, guys, we can get to 0. We can get to 0.
Let's see. £5 from Jack Cavey. How long until Posey Parker starts going full on I am a woman, similar to the I am a surgeon meme? Oh, is that from like the Good Doctor or whatever? See, I don't really... The meme is a little bit funny, but it also feels a little bit ableist because, like, it's a person who isn't neurodivergent playing a neurodivergent character, and it gives me the, it's a little like, is that like, rubs me the wrong way a little bit. Anyway,
$9.99 from John Doan. Hey ladies, it's Atheist Punk 666. Cool. I'm glad I remembered the number 1 show was on. I'm learning more every week. Hashtag Team Arden, the Snake Queen. I would love to send you plants for your snakes free. Giving warms my heart. Oh,
that's very sweet. The setups for our snakes, having live plants are probably not great. And in my experience, because we do mostly heavy-bodied snakes, they crush plants. They crawl over them because they're like, ooh, new thing to crawl on. And then they crush it down to the ground and then they crawl all over it and it gets stamped down further. And so they all just kind of die pretty quickly. But fake plants are okay because snakes don't really care. They don't really know the difference. $5 from Robin Webster. Super duo Katy and Arden tuned in late but wondering if you knew MTG helped get the trans insurrectionists moved to a women's facility. Hashtag Team Takis. I didn't hear about that, and that is actually surprising to me.
Is she actually?
I don't know. Yeah, I haven't corroborated that, but I mean, if she did, that's a good thing, I guess. Maybe. I don't really know. Anyway.
Oh yeah, okay. There's a news thing here. Hang on. I want to know about this.
Okay.
Transgender January 6th rioter is now in a women's prison. Did far-right Republicans help? ? So that means no, they didn't. She's been convicted for a role in the US insurrection, has been transferred to women's prisons after being temporarily held in a men's jail. She appealed Marjorie Taylor Greene, Matt Gaetz, and Jim Jordan in the hope of being sent to a women's prison. It remains unknown if they had anything to do with the action by the Federal Bureau of Prisons. None of them have responded for comment. So no, the answer is she didn't do anything about it. Of course she didn't, and it's probably just part of their normal process. Like they probably put her in solitary, did a check, and then moved her to the appropriate prison because that's what they've been doing for decades. That's what I'd guess.
I mean, yeah. I don't have any more thoughts on that. $20 from Gabe Valdez. Oh, wait, is this you or me? I think this one's you.
Oh, so you now.
Called to ask how to combat my dad's concern with trans women in sports. He's generally pretty liberal, but thought they should regulate it more after Leah Thomas's win. Seems like you were tired of sports calls, though. I am tired of sports calls because Leah Thomas won like one competition and then placed like absolutely not first in all of the next. Everyone likes to pretend she broke all these crazy records when other cis athletes were outperforming her in plenty of other spaces. Like, there's nothing to regulate other than I don't like the notion that a trans woman could compete with women and ostensibly win. So like, what is the solution? You want us to compete and lose all the time? Are we valid then? Like, yeah, you're a woman. You're supposed to suck at things. So compete and do badly, and then you're valid. Like, it's
my two angles to try. One of them is, if you just imagine just a different universe, trans women and cis women are identical in sporting performance, what percentage of people who win women's sporting events would you expect to be trans? 0 or non-zero? Or what? Because how do you know whether from wins alone? Because obviously the answer is that there should be at least some winning, and it should be like 0.3% or whatever, because that's what the percentage of trans people is. So if you're seeing trans women win, how would you know whether we lived in that universe or not? Well, we would have to look at the percentage of wins that trans women have of women's sports. And is it more, equal to, or less 0.3%? Because there's a lot less. So people will just see a win and they instantly react. But actually, if it was exactly fair, we would get more trans women winning. So...
Right. Wasn't there
argument,
the power lifter in the Olympics? Like one woman and
she did not finish.
Yeah, however many years even qualified, and she didn't finish to even get like a placement, right? It was like she was like 7 points away from placement. Like, it's we've gone over this so many times. I'm not going to reiterate my entire position. It's just frustrating because the things that they bring back are not arguments. They are, but Leah Thomas won something, and it's like, okay, and that's not an argument for anything. Anyway,
it's still just irrational rubbish. 120 Czech crowns from Naresh. I have a personal bias against people named Gabriel, abusive partner. Glad this guy isn't making me have to confront that. Sorry to hear that, Naresh. Yeah, well, that's a good thing that he's not trying to compel you into compelled speech. I don't know, fucking... It's just such... Gender criticals do this all the time. Like, they take something totally normal and choose the most extreme words, like, they possibly can, because they don't have a real argument. Like, they can't really say, I shouldn't be judged for insulting trans people, because that's really what they want. So they'd be like, my speech is being compelled by the woke left trying to cancel people. Like, mate, people are judging you because you're a prick, and you're trying to make it sound like you're like some poor embattled hero. You're just a twat. Like, grow up.
Yeah, the direction I was going to go with that was to ask for what his definition of like compelled speech was, because if it's you get fired for misgendering people, that's not compelled. You were allowed to misgender and you faced consequences for it. Like, but anyway. Oh wait, we haven't read this one. 100 Czech crowns from Naresh again. The first thing the doctor did when I was born was cut off my pronouns, then the umbilical cord. Nice. Yeah, same actually.
By the way, you should be on 1 point. 10 Canadian dollars from Erin. Great show today. I've been sick this week, but the upside is I get to watch the show live. # Team Katy. Oh, hope you get better soon, Erin.
Yeah, good luck getting better. We have Laser Lizard, the red-eyed crocodile skink. I may be biased, but lizards are the best topic. Hashtag Team Arden. Thank you. We got I think I already mentioned it a couple weeks ago, an Argentine black and white tegu, and we're slowly trying to interact with her more now. It's really exciting, but she like cuddled with Matt on his rocking chair a little bit, and because they just like to hide their face and bury their
Matt's
face
got a
in
rocking
between
chair.
you, and it's amazing. Yes,
Matt's
Matt
got a
has-
rocking chair. That's pretty cool.
He does. He has a chair.
Does he knit?
He does. No, he used. No, I'm just kidding. He used to crochet though. He doesn't really do it nowadays.
Sorry, I'm eating Pringles. $4.99 from John Doan. I just don't get transphobes. They should get out of their basement and go out and meet people who are not like you. I meet new people all the time. Be open-minded. Yeah, absolutely agree. I mean, it is definitely a view for people who haven't met real people in their life.
Yeah.
Um,
It's funny when people say, yeah, take positions like Gabriel's, but like, oh, well, they could tell me from looking at you. When it's like, interacting with people is a very good indicator of what they think about you and how they perceive you. And I think I would have figured that out if it was the case. Then we got $5 from John S. Thank you, Katy and Arden. You can call me Piglet. LMAO. Piglet
You
is
have
my
to pay us
favorite
for that.
gender.
100 Czech crowns from Naresh. Pink is superior to mayo. I mean, yeah, all colours are superior to slime. Hashtag Team Katy because they're laughing at my Bellend joke last week cheered me up even a day later. I actually changed Jimmy in my phone to Jimothy Bellend. And I got a message from him today and I was like, who the fuck is Jimothy Bellend?
Also, Matt put in chat, I crochet. Knitting is inferior.
Okay.
See, I need that.
We need a gif of Matt crocheting in a rocking chair cuddling a lizard.
$4.99 from Ramona. My theater professor in college was extremely insistent that pink is not a color and doesn't appear in nature. I don't even know, guys. There are pink flowers.
Flamingos.
Now, granted, flamingos are that way because of what they eat, right? But they still are pink. Like,
Still pink. Yeah, and loads of flowers. Yeah. And some
a
birds.
weird take.
Probably some insects.
I remember somebody in high school that I went to high school with also made that case. Also, I saw your thing, Issa. I'm sorry, our super chat threshold is $5, but just because I think Issa's cool. He said, wow, keep up the great work, Katy and Arden. He's the only... So he was a Muslim debater against Matt, but he does the DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion education for college campuses, I think is what he said. I'm like, oh, he's really nice. Anyway, stop gassing him up.
Cool.
$10 from Eva. Best show to listen to while working on gaming or doing chores or feeding pet frogs. Hashtag Team Katy and Arden. Oh, give us both a point.
We both lose a point.
We both okay. That's fair. We both lose a point. I'll go back down to. Nice. I hope you're enjoying feeding your frogs.
10. Sorry, I'm eating crisps. I don't. I'm being really rude. 10
So
Canadian
rude.
from MK. I really want to hear what you think about the process across Canada yesterday. Maybe next week. Oh, hashtag Team Katy, I guess. Flipped a coin. Sorry, Arden.
That's okay. I'll allow it. I mean, I don't know what to think. It kind of makes me think of when the straight pride parade happened in Boston. It was one of those things where it's like, I don't
It was a
necessarily.
moment, wasn't it?
Yeah, I don't necessarily know that there's something that the government should be able to stop in and of itself. But I think it's good when town hall does something like, fine, you know, we can't stop you, but we will raise a flag and say transphobia is not welcome in the city. I think that's probably the most ethical way to handle it in like a free speech kind of society where it's like, you're allowed to say it, but we're going to make sure that our position is known, that we oppose you and everything you stand for. The city of Boston did not do that subsequent to the straight pride parade. So,
yeah, you definitely don't want the government shutting down protests. That's pretty dangerous.
Yeah.
it's pretty demoralizing that there were so many people. I mean, I saw a video of it and it looked like, I mean, gender critical protests in the UK often get, there was one in Scotland yesterday or the day before which had 3 people. So,
Nice.
that's the kind of size we're used to here. And I guess it's a different movement over there in Canada, but it looked like hundreds of people, which was kind of demoralizing. But, pride protests are absolutely huge. So generally, I don't know.
Yes. $5 from JC. Is Seth Andrews' cat a cat? LOL. And did Matt get the tattoo yet? Hashtag team the line and go fuck yourself, Jimmy. Try. Thank you to all for helping me be a better informed ally. So I think we had a goal of like a certain amount of patrons or something for him to get it. And I don't think we hit that, in the momentum I think has fallen out from beneath us on that, because everyone's got a lot of stuff going on. I know we're trying to start like several other shows here at the line too, and to do that we need other producers, and so our energy got taken away from certain things. But I think Matt still probably will get it if we hit the goal. So maybe that means you guys should all go subscribe to our Patreon right now, patreon.com/calltheline, so that you can make Matt get that tattoo.
$10 from Eva. I am exclusively attracted to exactly one secondary sex characteristic: high concentration of circulating blood clotting factors. I am a hemocoagulatiosexual. Give me that beautiful vitamin K, baby.
So you're a vampire? Is that what I'm getting?
Ooh, bit sus, but a sex-driven vampire. I mean, that makes as much sense as claiming that sexuality is, like, controlled by gametes. Like, you can't detect it, so it's not part of your sexual orientation.
Yep. £5 from Samantha Patrick. Hashtag Team Katy. Nice. Katie's at
Thanks,
negative
Samantha.
46.
Samantha. I don't know why I said that. Samantha. $4.99 from Claire. Hashtag Team Katy. Yay. Thanks, Claire.
You guys are almost going to get her to negative 40 before the end of the show. I'm so proud. $10 from Dylan Fuller. People saying, what if IAD is an animal as a gotcha, as if other kin don't exist and are literally harmless? And the litter thing was for kids trapped because shooters and need to use the bathroom in class. Okay, yeah, I didn't even know about that, but that's...
Did you miss this whole thing, Adam? Because this was like a talking point like 6 months ago.
I remember conservative people were talking about litters in schools. I just assumed it was a completely bald-faced lie. Like there was nothing to it, and they were just like making shit up.
I heard the articles I read that did some investigation on it found that some schools had bought bulk cat litter and stored it in places in case kids need to go to the toilet in an active shooter situation. But I don't know how true that is either. Yeah, but it's all just bullshit. Like this person says, like you can call them other kin or anything, like however they want to describe themselves. Like, okay, if it's my friend, I might want to know about them and what they're doing, but it literally doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't affect me. It doesn't affect you where I go to the toilet. It doesn't affect you if some kid meows at you when they walk past them.
Yep.
Just get a life. Like, I'm not thinking about this stuff all the time. Like, I've kind of zoned out a little bit from LGBT rights activism recently from burnout. Like, who has to, like, do you really have so little going on in your life that this is what you think about? Like, I don't think about LGBT issues at all until I go on the internet and see a load of people lying about trans people, and then I respond to it, and then I log off, and I'm thinking about something interesting like dinner or Pokemon cards, like or death metal. Like, what? Didn't you have a hobby? Just what's wrong with people?
See, I just started playing World of Warcraft again, so that's what I'm thinking of when I'm not here.
Exactly.
I'm like, oh man, what's the fastest way? What's the fastest route to get from level 10 to 60? Yeah.
Buy a character off eBay.
Probably. You can buy characters now. You can buy level 60 boosts from Blizzard now. I don't want to do that, but I did get a free one when I bought the expansion. Anyway, I'm going to stop being a nerd. 6969. Wait, is that also Swedish Karuna? I forgot. From Robert Halstig. I don't know. We've read it so many times from Naresh.
No, Naresh is Czech.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Naresh is Czech, and this is Swedish.
Mhm.
They're both, yeah, okay. Brain. I'm raised in a liberal
Fucking
family
Americans.
and planning to come out as a cis person. Any advice? Sounds stupid, don't it? Why is the other way the norm? Hashtag Team Katie. Yeah, there was a great kind of, in this vein, a little short that was like, imagine a world where everyone's gay and this girl like had a crush on a boy and like what her experience was like trying to come out and getting harassed for it and all that kind of stuff. And I don't know that that's super compelling, but I get what you're saying. There shouldn't even be a need to come out. It should just be like, hey mom, my pronouns are this now. And like, then you just start growing out your hair and you don't have to explain it. Like, I don't know.
Or you don't, because you don't want long hair. There was some conservative comedian who did like coming out as a maybe it was like coming out as a conservative thing, and it was literally one of the most cringe things I've ever seen in my life. I can't remember where I watched it, but my god, I just felt like embarrassed, not just for him, but for people who thought that was funny, and for their friends and family who might know that the person that they otherwise like finds that funny. It was just like, oh, why aren't these people capable of comedy? It's just so embarrassing.
$5. Wait, no. Is this me? I don't remember anymore.
It is
No.
now.
$5 from Con Min Nguyen. Another one for hashtag Team Katie, since she takes spicier topic than Arden. Does she though? I feel like I just
You can't handle the spice as much, mate. You burn out.
Kate. I feel like this is so not true. Katie like has a more decorum to how she goes about handling spicy topics. I just have said many times, I'm not going to be patient with bigots. If you're going to be a fucking dickhead, I'm not going to be like, let me teach you very carefully all the things you need to know. Like, no, if you're going to be an irrational dickhead, I'm going to be a dickhead back at you.
Just it's the difference between England and America. That's the...
Probably.
9.99 from Louise Richardson. I'm late. Why does Katie have negative points? Hashtag Team Arden. Because you're not voting for me, Louise. I could be on positive if it weren't for you voting for Arden.
It's true. It's all your fault specifically, Louise.
It was if Louise isn't here at the start, I get minus 50 points. That's what happened.
Yep. £5 from Freakish Uproar. I can't stick around, but I wanted to drop a few groats to show my support. I don't know I've ever heard that word. Groat.
It sounds kind of grim to me.
It's yeah.
Show us your groats, love.
Yeah, it does kind of sound like that. It's a little weird. Anyway.
$20 from Dan Hodemaker. Almost halfway through season 3 of Turf Wars. Amazing. And this lady has blown my mind. Thank you for educating my dumb ass. Katie rocks. Thanks to the line crew and Jimothy Bellend too. Hashtag Team Katie. Thanks, Dan.
Well, I'm glad Katie's education has helped your ass. My ass is smart, so didn't need it. $10 from Dark Matter. The only good GC is GC Green. All there is time. Be what you are. Don't fucking care. I'm cis. Don't let the oppressor choose. Is this a song or an artist?
GC Green is a musician, best known as the co-founder and bass guitarist of the industrial metal band Godflesh. Oh, okay.
See, even the bands I like, I couldn't tell you almost any of the members' names. So when people drop names, Matt does it all the time. He'll be like, oh, this is so-and-so. And I'm like, you got to be real simple with me because I'm not going to know the individual names of these people.
I didn't know Godflesh because I don't really like industrial. Sorry. $5 from Frank. Love when the dream team is on. Hashtag Team Katie. Let's get her out of the negative. Thanks, Frank. We can do it. 41 more votes from Frank. And oh, okay.
That one vote
9 now, right?
counted as 50 votes.
Oh,
congratulations, Frank. You did so well. And the reason that is because that was the last super chat. So we don't have any more. So, I realized we didn't tell you guys about the rest of the shows on the line. So, real quick, just gonna let you know the schedule for this week. This Sunday at 2 p.m. Central Time, we're gonna have the Sunday show with Jimmy and Matt, as always. Monday on Skeptalk at 6 p.m. Central Time, we've got Shannon Q hosting with guest Will McCaffrey. On Tuesday, in Dying Out Loud at 6 p.m. Central Time, we've got Dave Warnock with Matt Dillahunty, new up-and-coming YouTuber. I don't really care for him, but maybe you guys will enjoy it. Then
a rocking chair, you know.
Oh, really? Does he? Oh, that's so cringe. And then on Wednesday, during the hang up, Matt will be back with a unannounced guest. Also, we have $10 from Gabe Valdez. Thanks for the advice. Nice to have responses ready in my back pocket. # Team America. And $5 from Louise Richardson. Okay, I'll rewind the show for myself. Damn, I should have bought mayonnaise at the store. Anyway, thank you to our call screener, Jess, for screening calls today. You did a great job. I thank you to all the mods. I see Dylan and I Got Cookies. I saw Stephanie Helms, and I don't know if anyone else is in there. And thank you to all of you guys for coming to watch. We appreciate it, and for helping us get the conversation rolling so we can do some education. I missed Sean Isherwood's second super chat, did I? Well, hold on.
Maths.
Let me find it. Let me derail the whole outro for Sean Isherwood. No, I'm just kidding.
Fuck's sake, Sean. Come
on. Sean said, someone asked, so an countably infinite sum can be defined as the limit as n tends to infinity of the sequence whose nth term is the sum of the first n summons of the sum. I don't know what any of that fucking means, but thanks. Anyway,
Sean.
I'm glad we did this. Thank you, Sean. And thank you guys. We will be back with Ben and I here at the usual time next week. I don't have the outro queued up, but we'll see you later. Oh, and the fucking song isn't going.
Oh, Arden is the worst
fucking
producer.
Shit. I hate everything and everyone. My life is over.
Then you hate you. Hate you and Timothy Bellend.